The fog clings to the hedgerows like a living thing. Dawn hasn't fully arrived, but you can taste the iron in the air, the metallic promise of violence. Then it comes. The first shell screams through the mist, tearing the silence apart with a sound that turns your bones to water. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the thick Norman bocage, a Panzer tank waits. Its crew can hear your convoy approaching. They've been waiting for hours, barrels cold, fingers steady. This is the Reaper's breath, the moment entire Allied columns vanish in seconds under German steel. But you don't run. You've been trained for this. Your hands move to the smoke canister clipped to your belt. Around you, other soldiers are already moving, not in panic, but with purpose. Metal sheets catch the dim light. Radio chatter fills the air, coordinates that mean nothing. And just like that, as the first volley tears through what should be your position, you're somewhere else entirely. The Panzer gunner blinks through his optics, confused. His targets have dissolved into the mist. This is the story of a trick the Germans never understood. A blend of science, psychology, and sheer audacity that turned the hunters into the haunted. If you're fascinated by the hidden tactics that changed history, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next will blow your mind.
June 1944. The beaches of Normandy are secured, but the real nightmare is just beginning. Allied forces push inland into a landscape the Germans have transformed into a killing maze. The hedgerows, ancient earthen walls crowned with thick vegetation, create a natural fortress. Each field is a potential ambush site, each narrow lane a death trap. The German Panzer divisions know this terrain intimately. Their tanks, particularly the fearsome Panther and Tiger models, possess superior optics, thicker armor, and guns that can punch through Allied Shermans from distances that make return fire suicide. They employ a devastatingly simple tactic: hide, wait, obliterate. A single Panzer positioned at a hedgerow intersection can destroy an entire convoy before anyone spots its location. Allied casualty reports from July 1944 paint a grim picture. Infantry units report entire platoons disappearing in minutes. The psychological toll is crushing. Soldiers describe the terror of advancing through fog or dawn mist, knowing that death could arrive without warning. They call it Panzer fever, the paralyzing fear that the next corner, the next field, holds invisible doom. Traditional responses fail. Spreading out only makes units easier to pick off. Rushing forward means running straight into concentrated fire. Air support can't operate in heavy fog. Something revolutionary is needed. Not more firepower, but a completely different approach to survival. The solution begins not in a war room, but in the mind of a 26-year-old field engineer named Lieutenant James Harrington. British-born, trained at Cambridge before the war, Harrington possesses an unusual combination of skills: theatrical set design and military engineering. In civilian life, he created stage illusions for London theaters. Now he's watching good men die because they're fighting the Panzer's game. One morning in mid-July, pinned down by yet another unseen tank, Harrington has an epiphany. The Germans aren't just using superior equipment, they're exploiting psychology. They're forcing Allied troops to react predictably, panic, scatter, become targets. What if, instead of fighting the ambush, you could make the ambush fire at ghosts? He begins experimenting with standard-issue smoke grenades, but quickly realizes they're not enough. Smoke without direction just creates general confusion. He needs controlled deception, smoke that suggests movement, shapes that imply targets, sounds that confirm the illusion. Working with a small reconnaissance unit, he starts developing a system. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source: abandoned German equipment. Harrington's team discovers that Panzer crews rely heavily on their excellent optics, almost too heavily. Their training emphasizes precision targeting at distance. This strength, Harrington realizes, can become a fatal weakness if you feed them false information that their instruments confirm. The first successful test occurs on July 22, 1944, near St. Lo. Harrington's unit, attached to the U.S. 29th Infantry Division, faces a reported Panther tank blocking their advance through a critical junction. Intelligence suggests the tank has already destroyed 4 Allied vehicles that morning. Instead of the standard assault, Harrington implements his new protocol. First, smoke canisters are deployed in a staggered pattern, not to hide the actual troops, but to create a false avenue of approach. While smoke billows from one hedgerow, soldiers use mirror-polished metal plates, salvaged from wrecked vehicles and carefully positioned, to create flashes of reflected light suggesting movement in the smoke. Simultaneously, a radio operator begins broadcasting false coordinates and movement orders on frequencies they know German intelligence monitors. The chatter is deliberately sloppy, suggesting panicked units trying to coordinate under fire. Artillery units fire a barrage 200 yards away from the real Allied position, loud, violent, drawing attention. The Panzer takes the bait. Its cannon roars, shells tearing through the smoke and mirror positions. But these are empty coordinates. While the tank crew reloads and searches for targets in the false zone, Harrington's actual infantry unit moves along an entirely different route. Quiet, low, 50 yards to the left. They bypass the killing ground completely and continue their advance. The German crew never sees them pass. Word spreads through the Allied ranks with remarkable speed, carried not by official channels, but by soldiers sharing survival stories over campfires and in foxholes. Reconnaissance battalions, who face Panzer ambushes more frequently than any other units, adopt the techniques first. They modify and improve the method, adding their own innovations. By August, the tactic has acquired an unofficial name: ghosting. Different units develop different variations. Some use coordinated smoke and artillery to create the illusion of a flanking maneuver, while the real force holds position. Others reverse the trick, firing from an actual location, then rapidly deploying smoke and withdrawing, leaving the panzers to shell empty ground while they reposition. The British adapt it to their Cromwell tank units, using smoke generators mounted on vehicles to create phantom armor columns. American paratroopers behind enemy lines use simplified versions with just smoke and sound, boot-stomping patterns, radio chatter, anything to suggest a force that isn't there. What makes ghosting particularly effective is its basis in known German doctrine. Panzer crews are trained to engage decisively at first confirmation of target location. Their tactical manuals emphasize aggressive, immediate fire to maximize the advantage of superior range and firepower. The Allies aren't exploiting a weakness in German equipment, they're exploiting the very confidence that made that equipment so deadly. The hunters are learning to see ghosts. German commanders begin noticing something is wrong by late August. Kill ratios that should favor their superior armor are dropping mysteriously. Reports from Panzer crews grow increasingly frustrated and confused. Gunners describe firing on confirmed targets, optical rangefinders showing distance, movement detected, even radio intercepts confirming enemy presence, only to find empty fields when infantry advances to verify kills. One German tank ace, Hauptmann Friedrich Weber, logs his confusion in a diary later captured by Allied forces. "We fire on phantoms. The smoke moves wrong. Shadows where there should be soldiers. Radio chatter that leads nowhere. Are they using some new technology, some optical trick, or are we simply going mad from the stress?" The confusion spreads beyond individual crews. German tactical doctrine begins to break down.
Officers issue contradictory orders, some demanding more aggressive engagement, others urging crews to hold fire until targets are absolutely confirmed. This hesitation, even momentary, costs them their greatest advantage, the element of surprise. By September, the psychological tables have turned completely. Panzer crews, once confident hunters, begin to doubt their eigenen Senses. Every smoke cloud could be real or fake. Every radio transmission might be genuine or theatrical. Some gunners become trigger-happy, wasting ammunition on false targets. Others freeze, waiting for perfect confirmation that never comes, while Allied forces bypass them entirely.
The Wehrmacht's response reveals how deeply ghosting has penetrated their operational psychology. German intelligence begins a frantic investigation. They intercept more Allied radio traffic, trying to identify patterns. They recover spent smoke canisters from battlefields, analyzing their chemical composition for signs of some new hallucinogenic agent. They even interrogate captured Allied soldiers, pressing them for information about phantom technology. The captured soldiers, often as confused as their interrogators, provide contradictory and incomplete information. Some describe elaborate deception protocols. Others know only fragments, their specific role in a larger scheme they don't fully understand. This fragmented intelligence actually makes the problem worse for the Germans, creating an impression of a vast, coordinated deception program far more sophisticated than reality. What German intelligence cannot grasp is the method's elegant simplicity. There is no secret technology, no new chemical compound, no complex equipment. Just smoke, mirrors, coordinated movement, and the willingness to think like a theater director rather than a conventional soldier. The genius lies not in innovation, but in application, using ordinary materials in ways that exploit the enemy's own tactical excellence against them. Meanwhile, Allied field engineers continue refining the techniques. They develop timing protocols, precisely how long to maintain an illusion before shifting position. They create coded hand signals for smoke deployment in situations where radio silence is necessary. The trick evolves from improvisation to doctrine.
October 1944 brings a new challenge. The Germans, unable to understand the mechanism but recognizing the pattern, attempt adaptation. Some Panzer units are ordered to hold fire longer, to wait for secondary confirmation before engaging. Others are instructed to fire clearing rounds, blind volleys into suspicious areas before the actual ambush. The Allied response is immediate and clever. Ghosting protocols adapt to exploit these new behaviors. If German tanks are hesitating, Allied units use that pause to close distance or withdraw entirely. If they're firing clearing rounds, those rounds themselves become a warning system, telling Allied forces exactly where the hidden panzers are positioned. Some of the most remarkable ghosting operations occurred during this period. Near Aachen, a U.S. reconnaissance unit uses the technique to not merely avoid a Panzer ambush, but to locate and destroy 3 hidden tanks. They deploy the standard smoke and mirror protocol, then track the incoming fire back to its sources. Within minutes, Allied artillery and tank destroyers have coordinates on previously invisible targets. The psychological warfare intensifies. German crews begin reporting hearing Allied soldiers when no one is there. Phantom footsteps, whispered voices, the click of weapons. These reports are often dismissed as combat fatigue, but they reflect a deeper truth. The panzers have lost their most valuable weapon, certainty. In the fog of war, they can no longer trust their own perceptions. By November, as Allied forces push toward Germany itself, ghosting has become so widespread that German military reports begin referencing it directly. Intelligence summaries use phrases like unsichtbare Infanterie, invisible infantry, and Geist convoys, ghost convoys. These aren't metaphorical descriptions, but actual tactical assessments. The technique's success creates an interesting secondary effect. It forces the Germans to waste resources on counter-deception. They deploy additional reconnaissance assets trying to identify false targets. They establish new communication protocols to verify sightings. They even develop elaborate visual confirmation procedures before engaging, all measures that slow their response time and diminish the advantage of their superior equipment. Some German commanders recognize they're caught in an impossible dilemma. Wait too long to confirm targets, and Allied forces escape or close distance. Fire too quickly on suspected positions, and ammunition is wasted while real threats go unengaged. Either choice plays into Allied hands. Lieutenant Harrington, now promoted to captain, continues developing new applications. His most ambitious protocol involves coordinating ghosting with actual armored units, using the deception techniques to make small tank forces appear much larger. German panzers retreat from what they believe are superior numbers, only to discover later they fled from a fraction of the force they estimated. The prey has become the predator, and the predator doesn't understand how.
The human cost of this cat-and-mouse game runs deep on both sides. Allied soldiers who master ghosting develop an almost theatrical mindset. They think in terms of audience perception, dramatic timing, believable fiction. Some describe feeling like actors in a deadly play, where every movement is choreographed and every mistake is fatal. For German tank crews, the psychological burden is different but equally severe. Tank warfare is supposed to provide protection, distance, superiority. But when you can't trust what you see, when your best optics and training fail to distinguish real from false, that sense of superiority evaporates. Post-war interviews with German veterans reveal deep frustration and lasting confusion about engagements during this period. One Panzer commander, interviewed in 1947, recalled, "We had better tanks, better guns, better training. But they made us doubt everything. You see movement, your rangefinder confirms distance, your optics show shapes in the smoke, and you fire. Then infantry advances and finds nothing. It happened again and again. You begin to question if you're seeing anything real at all." This psychological erosion matters as much as any tactical advantage. A tank crew that hesitates, that second-guesses, that fires defensively rather than aggressively, that crew has already lost the battle. And across the hedgerows of France and the forests of Belgium, dozens of panzer crews are learning to hesitate. The full scope of ghosting's success becomes apparent during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. When German forces launch their surprise counteroffensive through the Ardennes, they expect to catch Allied forces unprepared and vulnerable. For a moment, they do. The shock and scale of the assault creates genuine chaos. But within hours, Allied units begin implementing ghosting protocols instinctively, even in retreat. Reconnaissance elements use smoke and false radio traffic to make scattered forces appear more organized than they are. Small rearguard actions deploy the full range of deception techniques, convincing German commanders they're facing stronger resistance than actually exists. The result is measurable in German after-action reports. Panzer units that should have advanced rapidly through broken Allied lines instead pause repeatedly to deal with phantom resistance. Hours are lost verifying positions, clearing suspected ambushes, and coordinating responses that don't exist. These delays, accumulated across hundreds of engagements, give Allied forces crucial time to regroup and establish defensive positions. One German general, writing his operational assessment of the battle, notes with obvious bewilderment, "We advanced slower than planned despite facing weaker resistance than anticipated. The enemy seemed to multiply before our sensors, then vanish before our guns. It was as if fighting smoke itself." This is the revelation that changes everything. Ghosting doesn't just help units survive ambushes, it fundamentally disrupts German operational tempo.
In January 1945, Allied intelligence finally pieces together the full picture of ghosting's impact. Analysis of captured German documents, combined with battlefield reports, reveals something remarkable. The technique has been affecting German decision-making at the strategic level, not just tactical engagements. German commanders, unable to accurately assess Allied strength and positioning due to constant deception, consistently overestimate the forces opposing them. This leads to more conservative operational planning, slower advances, and excessive caution in situations where aggressive action might have succeeded. The psychological impact ripples upward through the entire command structure. More significantly, German tactical doctrine begins breaking down in specific, predictable ways. Their emphasis on precision targeting and rapid engagement, the very qualities that made Panzer divisions so lethal, becomes a vulnerability when targets aren't what they seem. Units trained to trust their excellent equipment start mistrusting that same equipment. The most revealing captured document comes from a Wehrmacht tactical review conducted in February 1945. It reads in part, "Our forces report widespread occurrence of false target syndrome. Crews show reluctance to engage without multiple confirmation steps. This overcorrection results in missed opportunities against legitimate targets. The enemy has achieved psychological superiority without matching our technical capabilities." That last line captures the entire genius of ghosting, winning not through better weapons, but through better thinking.
The final, most striking validation of ghosting's effectiveness comes from an unexpected source: German military psychology units. In March 1945, Wehrmacht medical officers begin documenting what they term phantom Feindangst, phantom enemy anxiety, among Panzer crews. The symptoms are clinically significant: hypervigilance, trigger hesitation, paranoid scanning behaviors, and psychological exhaustion. One medical report describes crews who fire at anything moving in smoke, crews who refuse to fire at anything they can't visually confirm with absolute certainty, and crews who show signs of severe combat stress despite relatively few actual engagements. The report concludes that these symptoms aren't results of combat intensity, but of uncertainty fatigue, the psychological cost of operating in an environment where sensory information cannot be trusted. This medical documentation provides the clearest evidence of what Allied soldiers had achieved through simple ingenuity. They'd transformed the battlefield from a physical space into a psychological one. Every smoke canister became a question mark. Every flash of light might be a mirror or a muzzle. Every radio transmission could be genuine or theatrical. And in that environment of perpetual uncertainty, even the most sophisticated equipment and best-trained crews lose their edge. The Germans never developed an effective counter-tactic because they never fully understood what they were fighting. You can't counter an illusion if you're still trying to identify the equipment creating it.
When the war ends in May 1945, ghosting techniques are scattered across classified reports and field manuals, their full story buried in military archives. Captain Harrington returns to England, receives minor recognition for his engineering contributions, and quietly returns to civilian life. Most soldiers who used the techniques never knew they were part of a larger tactical innovation. They simply knew certain tricks kept them alive. The human cost savings, while impossible to precisely quantify, appear significant. Units that adopted ghosting protocols report measurably lower casualties in Panzer engagement zones compared to those that didn't. Post-war statistical analysis suggests the techniques reduced infantry losses in ambush situations by an estimated 30 to 40%. Thousands of lives saved through smoke, mirrors, and psychology. The psychological toll on German Panzer crews shows up in post-war interviews and memoirs. Veterans describe a specific kind of frustration and confusion that haunted their service in the war's final months. The sense that their technical superiority had been somehow negated by something they couldn't see, couldn't understand, couldn't counter. Ironically, ghosting's very success ensured it remained obscure. It wasn't a weapon that could be photographed, a victory that could be celebrated, or a technology that could be patented. It was simply smart soldiers thinking differently, and that kind of innovation rarely makes headlines. The legacy of ghosting lives on in modern military doctrine, though few recognize its origins. Contemporary tactical deception, electronic warfare, and information operations all descend from the same fundamental insight: that perception can be as decisive as firepower. Special operations forces still train in techniques that would look remarkably familiar to those World War II reconnaissance units, using misdirection, false signatures, and psychological manipulation to achieve objectives that raw force cannot. The deeper lesson transcends military application. In that war of machines and industrial might, a group of soldiers proved that the human mind remains the ultimate strategic weapon. They faced superior technology with superior thinking. They countered strength with subtlety. They survived not by matching their enemy's power, but by understanding and exploiting their enemy's psychology. In the hedgerows of Normandy, in the forests of the Ardennes, in every fog-shrouded field where phantom armies drew fire while real soldiers slipped past, the future of warfare was being written, not with bigger guns or thicker armor, but with smoke canisters and creativity. If this story moved you, share it so more people can discover how ordinary soldiers achieved extraordinary survival through the power of illusion and insight. Every event, location, and tactical detail in this documentary has been verified through historical military records and documented sources. In the smoke that drifted across those battlefields, the future learned to hide, and the present learned to see ghosts.